You are now listening.
You are now listening to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.
Good evening. We are back, lifting our voices. The BMEA Podcast. It's been a good little minute since we've been here.
Yeah, man. Time is flying. This was about a month ago we were on.
Yeah, I think we've been off for a minute. Had to get spring break in, of course. But we're back. Here we are. Mike, it's been a long time. How are you, man?
Hey, man, I can't complain, man. Just doing a lot of stuff around the house. I saw the kids yesterday and the day before that for the testing. So it's good to see the kids, man. It make you remember why you get into this work, man. So it's good.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that because I've been saying this a lot. One of the things that the 45th president said that stuck with me really was, he was talking about the economy and all of that, right? And his thing was the economy will be fine once we get out of the pandemic because it wasn't broken in the first place, right? And so once everybody can get back, then we're just right back to it. And I don't know, I'm not an economist or whatever, so I'm not going to verify whether or not that's true, but the concept itself is what stuck with me. And I think about our school culture and our kids and our community. And, yesterday and today with the kids back on campus, I felt that, right? Like, all it really takes is just everybody to get back and we're right back, to being the school that we are. And so I felt that yesterday. So anyway, it was a good day with the kids back on campus for testing. Chris, I think the last time we were on, you said you were taking a family trip or something.
Yeah. We went to Florida, went to Orlando, went to where we go? Universal Studios, man. So, Universal is interesting because I have kids at all different ages. I got a 12-year-old, 6, and 2-year-old. And what I found is that the rides don't really serve, multiple age groups very well there. So it was either Jada was on the ride, she loved her. It was like she was like, okay, why am I here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
DJ either couldn't get on the ride or it was a little baby ride. So it was hard to please everybody. But we had a good time, man. Came back, got my COVID test results back, negative out here. So that was blessing to travel, very socially distanced as much as we could. But yeah, had a good time, man. But like you said, Spencer been in school this week, and having to get up like an extra hour or so just to, commute and
that's the killer.
Yeah.
That's the killer. Getting up to go to work. Oh man, I don't want to bring that back.
Whenever we get like in the summer, whenever we get back in, starting school up in typical times, and I have like a 2-week training camp. I put myself in right before school starts where I get my schedule back on track and all of that. Yeah. So definitely some adjustments. We got a good show. We got two good guests, 2 strong guests coming through, Jason Acosta and Sterling Grimes, and talk a little bit about how all of these different organizations that are, doing similar work can continue to work together, collaborate, amplify each other so that, we can get this message to the national stage. So we've spent a little bit of time talking about that. We always got some hot topics. Here in Michigan, we're dealing with a bad case of corona statewide. So, there's talk of reopening schools still, and we're just gonna, give our 2 cents about that. And there's some other things going on around the country, and we'll touch on that. But I think, unless there's any disagreement, we can jump right in.
Well, how you been, Jerry?
Thanks for asking.
How you doing?
Yeah, I've been good. My mom and her husband, they moved to Charlotte for retirement, so was down there for spring break. Never been to Charlotte. You guys ever been to Charlotte?
Yeah, my grandfather used to live there
once.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it was a cool city. It's always interesting going to the south. It's just a different speed always. But I did have my first, and I know Mike for sure you'll appreciate this, but I had my first cookout experience. Had to make sure. It was good. It was good, and I was concerned about the price, but the food was good. It was very cheap. I'm saying it was cheap.
Yeah, that's the experience. Is that it's super cheap.
Yeah,
I was for it to be as good as it is. So
that's exactly how I would put it. So that was cool. And then just always being in the South is a different, like I said, a different speed. People are very, very polite, all of that. So it was cool.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad wants to move to Charlotte too, man. So I see all our folks retiring and moving south.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, so that's what it seems like. My mom and all her friends are like, "Oh yeah, we're all moving down to North Carolina and all of that." So Anyway, it was. I guess it's it's way cheaper than DC. I don't know what it compares to here, but it's way cheaper than DC where they moved from. So I know they're happy down there.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I think we're ready to jump in.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, man. I'm bring on our first guest, Jay Acosta, man. I met him on our first actual Black Male Summit. I sent out invitations for brothers to come speak and hold sessions, and Jay hopped right on it. Not ever meeting us, and he came all the way from New York to Detroit to talk more about NYC Men Teach. And we've just been connected ever since, man. He's been a good friend of mine, and we've linked up a few times. And it's just, one of those brothers are really about the work. So I just always appreciate him and keep in contact with him. So without no further ado, I'm going to bring Jay to the show.
Yo, what's happening, y'all?
What's up, Jason? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I'm happy to be here. It's an honor to be here, to be building with y'all. I'm happy to see y'all faces, man. It's been a minute, and we'll get into the last time I see y'all faces. But in general, man, I'm excited to break bread. For those of you who don't know me, I'm from the Bronx, New York. Always got to shout out the Bronx. Always got to represent. And I'm a social worker. So social worker and educator, but social worker is my true identity. As Mike mentioned, I work for a New York City mayoral initiative called NYC Men Teach. And we focus a lot on the recruitment and retention of male educators of color across all New York City public schools, so 1,800 schools. Outside of that, I wear a number of different hats. I launched my own consulting business called We Shift the Culture LLC, really looking at how to develop identity and healing curriculum for school spaces, really thinking about trauma that people of color experience, and how do we create these spaces to heal and build together due to all the trauma that we've experienced. And I also have a podcast called Live in the Bronx. What you'll notice about me and what you're seeing in my intro is that all of my work is really around Black and brown folks, right? Really creating opportunity, empowering each other, and building, man. If it ain't about that, I'm probably not really going to be involved in it. So that's me, man. And I look forward to talking with y'all.
Hey, man, appreciate it, Jay, man. Absolutely, man. Like I said, one of those guys that been about the work. He showed love from the beginning, and we were able to kind of connect after that and sort of collaborate. And another brother who I want to bring on the show next to is we met around the same time. So Sterling Grimes met in Philly doing the work with the BMEC. Went out there a few times. I know Jay went out there to those fellowship meetings too, and just good brother doing the same work. And it's just like we connect. We got the same vision, and it's just been love ever since. So now that we got a chance, I want to bring Sterling onto the show as well. Sterling, what's up, man? Tell the people who you are.
What's good, everybody? Great to see y'all again. I was listening to Jay and I was like, God, the last time I think I saw y'all was literally 2 years ago. It's wild. Good to see everybody. My name is Sterling Grimes, he, him pronouns. I am an educator by trade. I spent 8 years in the classroom teaching middle and high school English. And then, as Mike mentioned, I was convinced to quit my job, drop everything, and join this venture that had no real plan behind it, but a lot of enthusiasm, called The Fellowship. It's an organization for supporting the recruitment and retention of Black men in education, based out of Philadelphia. Most well known for our Black Male Educator Convening Series, which is where a lot of us connected and started building some of these ideas of we're all doing similar stuff. We were trying to build this out in our areas. Let's figure out what it looks like to collab more. And so that has been, I think, the genesis of a lot of really cool stuff in my world. More recently, I too became a part of LLC Twitter. I started my own firm in the background just to kind of make some moves and focus on projects that were really important to me around equity, particularly when we think about kids and teachers in classrooms. And so I've been able to work with a couple of different organizations across the country over the last year or so. Really excited about some cool things that we're doing. My latest venture is with Prince George's County Public Schools, where I grew up. So shout out to the DMV. We are building
Moco.
Okay, Moco. That's cool. That's cool. Okay, I see you coming around 95. It's all good. Beltway. Always busy. My God. But we're building a social justice academy for high school students. We just launched last Saturday, actually. So pilot program, but we are putting students in the driver's seat. We're going to provide leadership development. You're going to sit down with actual county leaders, develop an action plan around what you care about and what you want to see changed. It makes sense to me. Like, let's listen to the students that we allegedly say we're serving every day. Let's put them in the room. So really excited about that work. 9 to 5, I also serve as director of network impact for Teach for America's DC region. So I support alumni efforts in the area. So we're bouncing around, y'all. Like we're doing a lot of pieces, but really excited to get this band back together from, last year. The Village was like, I think, a beautiful, organic, but really needed space. And so I'm really excited about what this can continue to grow to be over the next couple of months into years, because we're playing the long game here.
Yeah.
Cool. Before we jump into like the main question, I do want to briefly ask you both, just, I know you guys are wearing a lot of different hats, and maybe for, I don't know, for maybe a young listener or even someone who may find themselves just, maybe a teacher who just wish they could do more, like kind of talk about maybe like that mindset of starting your own consulting firm or just kind of venturing out to like spread that impact. Briefly, I know we have a lot to discuss, but I'm just curious. I think that's really cool that you all both kind of wearing multiple hats in this field. Anyone?
Yeah. I was waiting to see if Sterling was going to jump in. So I'll jump in real quick. That's a dope question. First of all, I think it's important to always just build with each other and share that knowledge, right? And so that's how I learned about it. So pretty much, long story short, I'll get real personal with you. And I think Chris, Sterling, Mike, y'all might all know this. I grew up in foster care, right? So 18 years of my life in foster care in New York. And coming into the work, when I was first studying social work, I studied social work to figure out how to answer the questions that I had growing up about my schools. Why am I attending schools that have metal detectors? Why am I attending a school that has police officers in and outside of the building, right? And why are my peers graduating? Why am I experiencing what I'm experiencing? So social work allowed me to answer those questions. And so I always knew, I was like, yo, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to have some large scale impact on education and try to figure out how to create opportunities for Black and brown folks who come from my community, period. Because I grew up in the South Bronx, and if you ever been to New York City or been to the South Bronx, it's predominantly Black and Latino people, right? It's just us. And so I started to really think about what that is. And as I learned about systemic issues, I came to the conclusion that all of the stuff I've experienced was intentionally created, right? And so all those challenges. And as I learned that, it lit a fire under me. And I was like, oh, we got to figure this out. We got to do something. And that led me into the work that I'm at. But then I was always around people and they were like, yo, you got a story to tell. You got a story to tell. And I'm like, yo, what do you mean? Like, I know I got a life experience that people can learn from, but what exactly does that mean? No one gave me the answer. But what they were doing was planting seeds and giving me the tools and resources to figure out how to take the next step. That became the LLC for me. I was already doing this work. Like, I love facilitation. I was already doing all types of facilitation around empowerment, community building, identity healing, etc. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna figure out how to do this, and I'm gonna just do it. And I did it over 2020 COVID, right? Because we had time, and I didn't really have much of an excuse at that point. I'm like, yo, this is time for me to figure this out. And that led me to doing a lot of dope work right now. So I get a chance to build with folks who are in the field, and I developed some identity empowerment curriculum for this organization in Boston. Shout out to the homie Robert, executive director. He is me. I'm working with some folks at Thrive and Thrive Chicago. We're building out some really amazing curriculum that will be piloted in Chicago public schools. So it's exciting, man, the power of the pen. And I started to really think about what is my impact and my legacy. And I'm just going to build for me, yo. The goal is to eventually venture off full time into this work and do whatever the hell I want to do, get paid and enjoy it. So that's where I'm at with it.
Shout out.
I feel you. Yes, enjoy it. Oh my God. Would love to enjoy it too. It's you speak on this piece that feels really resonant for me around, like, I think for a lot of people, like, COVID sparked some necessity in some ways. Like, the truth is I found myself without a job. I was working for the fellowship, and then I wasn't. And there was a question about, like, what was going to happen next. I was kind of moving around a couple of different little lifts, just like random stuff on the side. And I took this one email before I left where someone was seeking some assistance. And I was like, honestly, I'm about to land this plane and transition out of the role. And they were like, we don't care where the business check goes. We just need to send a business check. Can you work with us? And it was like, yeah, I can. I actually do have these skills. It turns out I am highly qualified to do this job. So let me figure out what it needs to happen. And next thing you know, LLC Twitter, guides the way, of course. And and we're here. And so necessity was really the father of invention, mother of invention, parent of invention here. But also, I think this piece was really critical for me, recognizing that education is what prepared me to be able to step into entrepreneurship. My ability to, look at these different projects from such a nuanced set of lenses has really strong roots in the fact that I was built as a great educator. And so I take my ability to move into this other space. And I think for educators who are thinking about, can I balance the two? Absolutely. It takes a lot of work for sure, but you absolutely have the skills. I think if you're a great educator, you can go do literally anything else, with the right amount of development and support. And so I think it is a space educators should absolutely, consider for themselves. One, we know the education sector is not compensating at market rate for the work that our educators do every day. So by all means, tap into the other skills you absolutely have and figure out a way to make those manageable for you. I think there's a number of entrepreneurs and edpreneurs nowadays that are starting to teach more about how they're making that balance work. And so I think the more that we build that community, the more we can strengthen educators to leverage themselves as true professionals so that they are seen for the real talent they have.
Man, that's a really good point, man. And I mean, it's a side point. I think educational entrepreneurship is something that, especially as Black male educators, they don't really talk about a lot, but I think it's where we find our niche and where we find like our place in this system to do the work well and to also be compensated fairly. So you brought up a really good point, man. And even with COVID, we had me and Chris had talked to you guys previously, like last year, something around the same time last year about collaborating together, Detroit, Philly, New York, like collaborating together to really talk about the topics that are important to us because we're all doing the same work. So we wanted to ask you guys, like, where do you see, Black organizations, Black and brown organizations that are in education that are trying to recruit, develop and make these changes in education? Where do you see us going from here? Anyway,
Jay, can I pop in first on this one? I have so many thoughts here, and to be quite honest, let's just go ahead and let the cat out of the bag. Like, this is actually what I'm trying to pursue. Like, this is the work that I think I want to double click on right now. So shout out to the funders who might be listening or get this one day. Like, we're here, we're ready to make moves. But I think this is really an opportunity for us to learn with and from each other. Over the last 5 years or so, we have seen organizations pop up all over the country who are doing this work in different ways and attacking different parts of it and are building phenomenal models for how we can do this. And I mean, look at NYC Men Teach in the way that, like, if we put together public-private partnerships, if we have like a governmental jurisdiction that is invested in this work, if we use our city schools, if we use higher education and leverage all of their talents together, we can build a strong core of teachers. Like, that absolutely is doable. We're seeing great SEO work out of Profound Gentlemen out in Charlotte. We're seeing huge collab in Kansas City. Shout out to The Block. Shout out to Latinx Ed Collaborative. Like, the work that's being done, I think we can absolutely have so much more impact if we do more to learn with and from each other's different strengths and areas of expertise. I think we've got a lot of place to think about. What does it look like to identify strong partnership with districts that we're trying to work with? What does it look like to be a great partner to the educators that we are serving? If we're thinking about this whole pipeline, how do we support our young Black and brown boys in schools the way, Jay mentioned He Is Me up in Boston is thinking about? What does it look like to get into the undergraduate space when we're looking at Summer House? So there's all of these different organizations doing stuff. And I think we can sit down in the right rooms. Y'all know I've been trying to get us together since BMEA 2018 to actually say, like, how do we scale? How do we identify what it looks like to pursue funding in the right ways? Because I think any organization doing this knows half our time gets spent trying to develop funds to push the project forward. And that is a huge drain on the potential impact that we have. And so let's figure out how to work smarter as opposed to harder. And I think these dialogues are a huge part of how we do that. Because we learn so much just sitting in these Zoom chats, right, y'all? Like, when we realize, oh, snap, like, you're working with this person and I've talked to that person and they're already working with you over here, like, just illuminating what we have sitting in front of us already and then putting some real investment into it, I think could be really powerful for us.
No, absolutely. I've had conversations with investors and corporations, and they bring up Jay's name or they bring up your name, and you know what I'm saying? So we're all doing the same work. It's just like, how do we leverage the fact that we're doing the same work to either, I guess, be stronger, do it the right way, or to find the money the better way? You know what I mean? So, and absolutely. Jay, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, the thing that I think is so dope about this is that we don't do it enough, right? And so because we saw that, we were like, yo, there's a space here that needs to be filled, right? And coming together across state lines, man, is huge. The thing that I think about is oftentimes what I've seen, at least in the spaces I've been in, everybody's trying to be the first. Like, I got to be the first to launch this initiative. I have to be the first to do X, Y, and Z. And the beauty in being able to just be like, yo, F all of that. We're here for the people. Let's build together is so dope, yo, right? Like, historically, we've been kind of there's been like white folks, right, who are essentially trying to keep us apart and stopping us from working together throughout history, right? So being able to come together and go beyond New York City and say, yo, Mike is in Detroit, Sterling's in Philly, DC, wherever you are nowadays, Sterling, my man, up and down the East Coast, right? So, but we find them, right? And we're like, yo, let's come together and let's build. And we've been able to collaborate with other folks and just thinking about the impact. When we have those events, we got folks from all corners of the country who are logging on, and just the power in that. Like, imagine, Sterling, if your vision comes together, right? We're going to speak it into existence. If that vision comes together, just imagine how powerful that could be.
Oh, I'm calling y'all. So stay by your phones, because y'all are a piece of this deeply.
I'm invested in it, man. I'm invested for sure.
So it's like a follow-up to this, right? Because I'm all for the spirit of collaboration, right? But I think Jason had a good point. Is like, people are trying to be first, and I don't know if it's necessarily be first, but it's like we're trying to prove effectiveness, right? And we're trying to be able to have measurable, shareable results with funders or to schools or whoever, where we can say, hey, listen, you know, we can do this work and have this impact on the community, the school, whatever the case may be. So when you mention collaboration, is it like, you know, you do your work on your city and my city, and we come together and do these like big conferences? Or is it like, hey, we got funded from this person? I'm like, what is it? Like, what's the tangible steps? Because I mean, I hear it, but like, I don't know how you practically do that. And I'm just curious if anyone has some, you know, how far can we take it? I feel like we're at this very infant stage of like effective like work around how do we change schools, because we still haven't been able to like make a big impact. And I think that's a big part of why there's no blueprint to really follow. You understand what I'm saying? That's how I view it. So I'm just curious what y'all think about that.
You know, I think we're still building this plane as we fly it. Like, and that has been all of our experiences building different organizations. We all understand like startup mode. You got a lot of enthusiasm. Somebody hands you one check to start doing a little something, and next thing you know, your name is up for like everybody's thing for 6 months, and it is just this whirlwind of like go, figure it out. And I think having been able to see a couple of different levels of this work now, having been a part of like a volunteer group, which is what the fellowship started as, and then becoming a part of its senior leadership, like intimately involved in almost every aspect of that organization's building, and then collaborating with so many other organizations to be able to see like, where are those spaces that we don't think about, like the work doesn't show, but that become really critical to maintaining like effectiveness and impact and sustainability long term. You know, I'm looking at models to bring up PG again. Like, they have such a brilliant community-based model for how they do their work, and it allows them to stay like lean in terms of their staff, but really wide in terms of impact. Like, that strategy stuff is something that I say, like, we need to sit down in a room and like peel back those layers on everybody's work. What are your strongest value adds? How have you been able to do that? And how do we figure out how to map that into our different locations or into our different contexts? I would love for us to like look through all of the pieces. How do we approach funding in the same ways? Because we're always trying to hit the same 10 big whales and then, you know, hit all the regional ones for us. Like, we all play this game. We're all sitting in the rooms, and would love to have a conversation with them about their funding structures and the way that they keep us still one hand tied behind our back every single time, which forces us to have to like devote more of our time to development than to the impact that they are allegedly funding us to do. But don't get me too far away from the point. So in my mind, I think there's potential for us to get really, really intentional about how we are building organizations, how we are scaling our work, how we establish partnerships, how do we, adjust strategy where we're learning new things. The interesting thing to land the plane for me is that some of our organizations are at this place that some people are just getting to now, quite honestly. I'm watching conversations happen and people are like, oh my goodness, 2% is not enough. I'm like, yep. Welcome to the party. We got a lot to do. Glad to have you in the room. But for those of us who I think we could call like emerging leaders in this space, who have done some of that like grind build, now that we've learned and now that we have stronger connections with some of that like established set of people who are a part of the system that we need to figure out how to dismantle, restructure, reimagine, insert revolutionary term here, like let's utilize that knowledge. Let's figure out what we can say, like, this is the value add that my organization brings, and here's how we capitalize the hell out of it for it. Like, everybody should be in the same room taking those kinds of notes. And in my mind, like, I'm ready to jump in and build some of those structures. Yes, let's go to the convenings. Yes, let's build community. But also, let's sit down let's have the meeting behind the meeting and say, like, how did we get here? Because I don't think we're doing enough of that, to the point about everybody trying to be first. Like, this is my idea right now, but this could be 25 other guys' idea, 25 other people's idea. Get there. Call me, because I absolutely want to be a part of it. But like, let's get there. The students we're trying to serve, the educators we're trying to support, like, they can't afford for us to wait. So let's jump in.
So our co-host Curtis, I guess he's working on his off day. I don't know. Yeah, and I think I kind of answered this, Sterling. This question was, how do we leverage the same work we are doing, combine our efforts, not get caught in the competing? And I think you hit on, that behind the scenes meetings, and not just the conferences, but really maybe working behind the scenes to standardize across cities, across regions, so that when those opportunities come for somebody, then, maybe everybody can jump on because we're doing the exact same work. But Jason, if you wanted to jump in on Curtis's question, since he decided to work on his off day, feel free.
Yo, so Sterling, you hit on a couple gems, right? That I just want to bring to the surface, or above the surface, right? I think one is the idea that when foundations fund you, they still have one of your arms tied behind your back, right? And that analogy is so big, because understanding funding is so important. And so many of us, when we get into the spaces of leadership, we don't fully understand how it works. We don't understand restricted dollars, unrestricted dollars, like all of these different terminology, that all the different terminology that goes along with funding, and just how people operate, right? Like the politics behind it. We got into a conversation about this earlier this week or last week, whenever we last spoke, and Sterling, Mike, and myself. And I was just like, yo, I'm not here for the politics, right? And what I'm seeing is that a lot of these big organizations or companies that do provide funding, their leadership is white, right? Even if we're having a conversation around diversity, those power players who have all the money, they white. So we think we're going in there, and we think we're going somewhere, right? But sometimes we got to ask, like, who's in control? And I think we got to figure out how to get there. And I don't know what all the answers are to that, but I do think, and we've heard this all the time, like, we need representation across all organizations, all foundations, all companies. Like, if we could figure out how to get into these spaces, man, then we can really figure out how to work together. And the other thing I want to add to Sterling's point, though, right, is like creating a national organization. The reality is, the reason that we can't really streamline across states for the most part is because states locally, like, due to law, can function how they want to. They don't need to always follow federal guidelines. And actually, that Milligan versus Bradley case in the 70s came right out of Detroit, right? Like looking at property taxes, looking at funding, and that case said essentially, federal government, you're not going to get involved in what we're doing locally. Right. So I think that becomes a challenge. So y'all might be doing something really dope in Detroit, and I'm like, I want to bring that to New York. But if it is against New York's policy, then I'm like, damn, like, how can we get around this? And that's where you need to pull in the stakeholders and all those other people. So I think nationally, what we need to do is think about what we want our national campaign to be, right? And then try to figure out how to demand funding from there that can then trickle down to the states. Right. Then we work with the state politicians and the state stakeholders there for our cities to be like, yo, this is what we need to do. Right. So I think that's the power in the national work.
Absolutely.
That's dope. And I think circling back to what Sterling, kind of kicked off by saying what he's trying to get into doing is, like, I think there's a need for some connectors, the person that is, like you said, Jerry, can conduct or set up those behind the scene meetings where we can just be open and honest and say, all right, listen, here's what we're doing. here's how we organize things. Here's like what we find a success with. Here's the struggles. Because I do think a lot of times we only see the public facing like side of organization. So we'll see like the website, but we don't know what it's like in your leadership team or like how hard it was to structure or the thought process that went into where you wanted to focus your energy, like to make your first program you wanted to develop. So I can see the need, man, for that sort of collaboration is someone really working to connect those dots. So I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. So appreciate everyone's comments. We're going to transition a little bit. We got some other hot topics to jump into. And one thing that Mike, Jerry, and I here in Michigan, we just got done helping to administer the SAT and PSAT test. And there's been like a lot of debate going on. Like, number one, like, oh, should you be doing testing right now with the pandemic being ongoing, right? But there's an even bigger conversation, I think, that's happening with just having us re-examine the purpose of standardized tests and its place in our society and its need or, it's, not being a need. So I'm curious, what do you all think about that? Like, do you disagree or agree with the idea of opting out of standardized testing? And like, what would school look like? I kind of envision for a second, if we just wiped it off the table, is there any negatives to it? Will be different. So we'll all kind of jump in on this. So whoever wants to kind of kick it off can go ahead. Personally, I'm gonna think about what it looks like, but I've been so indoctrinated to this system that I'm like, oh, you need to, but I'm really like, do you really? So I'm gonna come back with some more thoughts in just a moment. I'm curious what you all think about that. Jerry?
Jason came off mute, so I'm gonna let him go.
No, you rock out, bro. I've been talking the whole time. I could jump in after you.
I think education will look a lot freer, right? Because we know that so many states and localities maybe aren't teaching directly to the test, but they have an ultimate goal that they're trying to accomplish around standardized testing. And so, I actually think that if we didn't have standardized testing, we would have a better teacher retention rate. I believe that because I think teachers would feel more free to teach some of the things that are most critical for our kids to learn as they enter into our society. So that's my short and concise answer to what I think it would look like. But whoever, please jump in.
Mike, you was gonna jump in just now?
No, I'm gonna let you go, Jerry.
Oh, okay. So it's interesting, right? Because I'm not in schools, right? I'm a social. I do macro work, right? Like systemic work as a social worker, and so that idea of standardized testing, I see a little different, and because I've never had to administer that, right? I never had to require that of students. I'm an adjunct professor now, and I choose not to have exams in my class. But that's for some of the reason you mentioned, Jerry. It's like I love creativity, and I think that there are ways, like we have schools that have that are project based. They don't have like state exams in order for you to graduate, and some of those are like top, quote unquote, top performing academic schools, right? And so something's working for them, right? Mm-hmm. And so we know that standardized testing isn't the end all be all. And if we were, and like I'm against it if I had to choose, right? But if you're going to use standardized testing, don't let it be the end all be all, right? Like figure out other ways to evaluate teachers, figure out other ways to evaluate grades for students, right? Don't, I that's what I think, like figure that piece out. But here's the thing I will say, testing is a multi-million-dollar business, right? If you Google the salary of the executive director of College Board right now, you probably see that they make upwards of $1 million, right? So testing is going to be hard to get rid of that, like nationally, because there's so much tied to that. And so the other thing I think about, particularly in low income communities and schools that are under resourced, is that those same schools are still held to the same standards, right? They have to take the same exam as everyone else in the state, but because they don't always have the actual materials needed to study for those exams, right? And so I think that becomes a problem. And we've seen that, right? Like there's been studies and research done within different urban communities, right? Low income urban communities, where we see that students don't always have what they need in order to study for that same exam that everyone else is required to pass. So I think, again, like there's a lot of issues that come with it, but let's say in the ideal world, everyone had the same resources, the same funding and all of that. cool, have a test, but just don't let it be the end all be all.
I mean, what I was going to say is that the SAT by far is nowhere near culturally responsive as it should be as a assessment, especially for Black and brown kids. So the test is biased. And I think everyone in education who's conscious can agree on that. Two, the test doesn't really like measure any level of success, like genuinely. You know what I'm saying? It's just like if a kid is going to be a great artist, the SAT test doesn't mean anything to them. So it's like, what are we really measuring with this test, except for the fact that like this company, College Board, is making a lot of money off it? I don't see, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't. I had a high score in SAT. Did it ever come up? Does it mean anything to anybody now? No. But I'm in education, so it's I think that like it doesn't mean anything where we are now. One, two. If we kept the SAT, then I think there needs to be a lot of like work around like revitalizing what it should look like, what it should be, in order for it to be more culturally responsive for the Black and brown students that have to take it. You know what I mean? I think it's a biased test and it needs to be evaluated. And if colleges are able to, you said SAT is a business, colleges are business too. If you took the SAT out, kids are still going to go to college.
Well, it's all a business, and it kind of showed itself over the last year, right? We see how many colleges say, we don't need your SAT score. We don't need all of that. We just need you and the check, right? So it's all a business. And I think back to Jay's point about the College Board, it's the same thing, right? It's all a business. So it'll be tough because I'm sure there's folks behind the scenes working to keep it in place. But to answer the question, I think we know that it's not the end all be all in terms of if a kid is going to be successful or not.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing before you jump in, Sterling? Because let's go back to what Jason was mentioning, right? I think when you're talking about like comparing and we talk about like lack of resources, man, it starts even before kids enter into schools. You know, it starts like with, you can even look at just, let's just say access to preschool, start there, you know, like how many kids in our cities are getting access to preschool. You see now schools like in urban areas are like trying to offer it, have it as, you know, included in public education, when in a lot of suburban areas, you know, parents are just paying for it, you know, because they see the value in that. But then you just look at just other factors, right? Just income and just jobs, and, you know, it's a lot. So I don't even, you know, it ain't, to me, it goes a lot deeper than just saying, hey, we got the same books to study from. It's like, it's an indoctrination that starts very early. And I think to all of our points, I think it's all part of a bigger system. And I think that the system is working like the powers that be want it to work. Like, think about it. Like, if colleges were unhappy with the test, they would be like, no, we need something else. Like, get rid of this. But like, they're happy with the data it spits out. It helps them on a large scale get the, you know, kids that they want on their campus that they're willing to let come. So it's like, so I don't know. That's just my big thought. It's like, it's like, I think, you know, you all just said it's a big system and it's a lot of money involved. And I think, you know, while we see a problem with it, a lot of times we preach college prep, but the colleges, they use that as a tool to build their universities the way they want to build it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we know like standardized tests and their like racist origins and the bias that still exists in how they approach content, all of that, and how you build this sort of like full industrial complex essentially between the testing companies and the colleges and universities, and even the calculators get put in there somewhere, because I'm sure Texas Instrument has got a piece of this too. Because at least in my day, I had to pay for that calculator. That thing was like $80, $90, and I was like, why? Yeah. I got to drop a whole Benjamin on a calculator, whatever. But I think, so here, two things that are popping up for me. And I remember that one thing that my first AP told me when I was a young little educator trying to start out. He was like, all tests aren't bad, but a bad test is like really a problem. Yeah. And it really started to help frame for me the idea of what does it mean. And I think this is just like a fundamental educator tool. What does it mean to like properly assess students? And so I fully support parents to answer the question, like being able to opt their students out of the exam. If I know the exam was never set up to let me be successful, like duh, like we go into a rigged system and expect the great outcome every time. I think not. But I do think there is a space for us. And actually, before I even get into that, the idea that we're calling it a standardized test when we know education is not standard in this country on so many levels, from like a systemic, like equity level, we know that, but even the context of what education looks like, what matters and what is relevant and what is like critical will absolutely vary based on geography, living experience, culture. All of those pieces should be infused into education because it should be responsive. We know this stuff. And so to assume that one test or one style of test is going to assess all of that, I think is just wild in and of itself. But I would challenge us if we're thinking about, not us, but like us, as we're thinking about like this system and how do we reimagine it? Like, what does it look like to identify an assessment, not necessarily a test, but a way of identifying students' current level of skill and where their strengths are? Like, what does it look like to do something like that that is responsive to education and not just teaching? Because teaching is, can you identify facts? Can you take this derivative? And yes, I can tell you that the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared, sure. But like, do I have an understanding of pieces that are going to allow me to be successful in whatever I choose to do in life? Do I have a critical ability to assess information, to identify fact, to develop a point? And those things can absolutely be assessed without necessarily being tested. And so I think there is a way for us to like shift some of those pieces. And so I fully encourage parents like stepping out of that whenever they feel necessary, because we know that that tool is still absolutely being used as a gatekeeper in certain places. And that's a huge equity issue that we got to address inside that full complex.
I appreciate that button, Sterling. So our next topic, and I think this will be the last one for tonight. So here in Michigan, I think everybody in the country knows we're having a tough time with COVID right now. And, you know, a lot of schools, you know, some of the schools in the city, you know, are on track to open up on Monday, right? And the governor hasn't shut that idea down, or and so I guess, and you guys are in different, you represent different markets in DC and New York. So for us, I get, and I'll ask Mike and Chris first, and then you guys can jump in with your opinions. At this point where we are, it's the fourth quarter of the year. We're almost right back to where we were at this time last year, believe it or not, you know, and considering we've spent 75% of this year online, does it make sense to open the schools on Monday? Some, you know, the schools that haven't been open yet. So I'll let Mike and Chris jump in, and then, you know, Sterling and Jason, if you want to give your thoughts or perspectives on what you've seen in your market so far, feel free to jump in.
So this is what I think. I think that, like,
come a little closer to the mic, Mike.
What you say, bro?
There you go. Move up a little bit.
Oh, my bad, man. I was getting too comfortable.
Talking to the mic, Mike.
My bad, bro. My bad. I was relaxing. You know what I mean? I was about to get in my bag. But anyway, like, I'm gonna do like Jerry, just hold it like, you know, I'm a rapper.
Yeah,
so like, no. So I don't think the schools are in person. I'm not sure how long it's going to last, because I honestly, like, with the spike in cases, kids are going to have cases. Someone's going to get sick. Like, it's not going to last. But I do understand the need, the want for kids to be in person. Like, just from the few days I've been in person with the testing, for the SAT testing and just PDs, it's like there's a feeling that you get from being around each other. So a school is a lot more than just the content. And I think that's what people need to focus on. So it's just like, if you're going to do in person, be intentional about with the in person. Like, build a community with your freshmen who've never been in that building before. Build a community with students who've lost loved ones, who've been isolated, who've had a home situation. Like, the in person space can, for the limited time that it can be, should really be about more than just the content. Because, like, I think we really are overlooking like how this whole year has impacted our kids. But I don't think it's going to last long, just because, you know, I don't think we really have gotten this situation under control yet.
I'm just going to jump in. You know, it's so funny. I like when great minds think alike, but, you know, the dean of my school, you know, he actually was just talking about doing some, like what you just said, like, you know, leveraging outside space. I think that's what kids are missing the most, is like, of course, yeah, you're missing the direct person-to-person instruction from teachers, but it's like that social aspect. Mm-hmm. So to hear you say, it reminded me of some stuff Jerry was kicking around, some ideas that he's, you know, I'm sure what's going to happen. You know, rules like long as we don't have to shut down completely. Because I agree, it's like that social aspect of it. I'm glad I have multiple kids, you know, like in my own personal house, because imagine kids who are at home by themselves all day, you know, socialize, turn to just like their phone or something like that. So yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Mike. It's like, you know, how do we make schools a place for community? Because I think that's the biggest thing that's missing. Do I think schools should shut down? I don't know. Sometimes I just say I don't know when I don't have the answer. I think it's tough because you have the local area is so divided and such strong feelings, and a lot of it sometimes it's not just racial lines, but sometimes, you know, based off location of where you live, like some suburban areas, the rates are not as high versus parts of the state like Detroit. You can look at the vaccination, you know, rates in areas are starkly different, and I'm sure that's having some impact, according to our mayor, on why you see cases rising. So it's a lot of things at play, and I think the governor is being very contradictory in some ways, but very careful not to impose more things that are going to like just inflame, you know, a lot of emotions. I really don't know. I'm masking up, and this last thing I'll say is because sometimes even this past week I feel comfortable, but then sometimes I'm like, man, this thing is still very real, right? And I find myself like seesawing back and forth to be like, oh, I should just be cool, and that's something I'm like, I need to just stay right here by myself. You know what I'm saying? Just because it is so real. So I don't know. Jason, Sterling, let us know what your take.
Well, I'm curious. I know you guys aren't necessarily directly in classrooms, but you talk to educators all of the time. And in your markets, I know New York and some aspects are in school, and I'm not sure about what's going on in DC. But, you know, when you talk to educators maybe who are in the classroom, what are some of the things that they're saying about their experience?
So it's interesting. I mentioned that I'm an adjunct professor, and at the school that I teach in, I actually teach a college course for high school students. So they after their full day of school, they're with me, and so I see it from them, and I see it from the teachers that I work with in my 9-to-5 job. And the one thing that I continue to see is just the need for community, right? Like generally, and obviously there's Zoom fatigue and all that stuff that comes with it, but with NYC Men Teach, we made it an intentional decision to still host these monthly events, and we did everything from like virtual open mic nights to like just panel discussions to just opportunities for people to just like chill, come together. And we always saw that after we end the event, similar to our events with the village, people stick around. They want to hang out. They want to talk. They want to get their mind off school. They want to, you know what I'm saying? Just have conversation. So I think I've seen a lot of that, just kind of the need for community. In New York, our teachers and anybody who was like on the front lines interacting with people, they were one of the first to have the opportunity to get vaccinated. And now, as of I think Monday, if I remember the date correctly, all adults in New York are going to be they're eligible to get vaccinated. So on the vaccine side, you know, that opportunity is there for folks to get that. But in the school side, I think we're also moving from 6 feet. They're trying to explore like moving from 6 feet to 3 feet in classrooms in terms of space. So I don't know, man. I really don't know what the answers are. I do know, you know, from what I hear, is mixed feelings. I personally don't mind being in person. I'm also fully vaccinated, and I thrive off like social interaction. I just do. I'm not saying I need you to be on top of me. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? None of that. But like just being in the same space, man, for me, is just, I enjoy it. Like, it, you know what I'm saying? It makes me happy. So.
Sterling, thoughts?
No, yeah, sorry. No, I was just feeling Mike being like, yep, I too am vaccinated. I too dig the social. No, I feel that. And I too am vaccinated. This is really interesting, but I think about it a lot from I'm in this group chat with a couple of Black male educators. And it's guys at lots of different levels, classroom teachers, school leaders. I now sit in this weird kind of like extracurricular space, but like I bounce between these levels. And for context, I work a lot at DC, but I'm based in Philadelphia. And so in Philadelphia, a lot of schools are going back. I know a number of the charter networks have been back for a little bit now. And teachers are absolutely like, this is bananas, because every 5 seconds there is another thing. And, you know, one of my homies texted literally like the other day being like, we had a COVID scare. Somebody came in the building, was like, oh, didn't realize we had a whole thing. And they were like, what's going on? Come to find out it was a sinus infection. And so it was totally fine. You know, thankfully it wasn't that big of a deal. But this kind of back and forth stuff is being felt everywhere. And that ricochet happens in every school, every classroom, every district. And so there's just this wild mess that we're trying to solve. And I think what it underlines for me is like the necessity of recognizing that our current systems are not enough. If our systems had the capacity to be responsive, if we had the flexibility to say like, we don't have to do this structure, I think there are ways that we could mitigate a bit more of the risk. I don't think we were ever going to be 100% on either way of this. There's just too many people and too many opinions for it to ever make that much sense. I'm never going to look for that. But I do think we could find a bit more like sanity and groundedness in our approach by being able to say, like, we don't have to do everything the way that we've always done it. Like if we're, particularly when I hear teachers being like, so I'm being dragged into the building because we are back in person, but most of my students have opted out of in person because we created that option. And so I go in the building to sit on Zoom with them at home, but I have to be in the building because we're in the building. Like, why do we do that across the board? When someone like me, if I were still teaching right now, I'd be like, I'm low risk enough to be able to do that. I feel confident enough in my own like health at this point and the way that I'm operating to be like, yep, send me into the building. And if that means one other person can stay out of the building and can support students who do really well in a virtual space, go ham over there, and I will work with the students who also feel safe enough and protected enough to come into the building. Like, why can't we be flexible like that? Because our system doesn't allow it. And so I think, one, I'm never going to tell anybody what to do with their health and safety. But I do put it to our systems and to the people who are leading those systems to start figuring out, like, what does it mean for us to really like shift? And I think this is, of course, way easier said than done. But I think we're in the best position we've ever been in to say, like, we have no reason to not try something different. And that kind of bold leadership and the kind of inputs that requires, strong partnership building, coalition building, investment, all of that stuff that's got to be baked in. Like, I'm asking myself the question now, like, as an emerging leader in the space, what does it look like to help build some of those bridges so that we can start moving these things? Because we know how deeply entrenched our systems are. It's going to take people in 20 different places pulling levers at the exact same time for us to change. And so I'm thinking a lot about, like, how do we get people in those positions to say, like, ready, and go.
No, facts. Man, I appreciate y'all, man. Like, this has been dope, man. We're gonna close it out. Jay, Sterling, man, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Jay, I'm gonna have to let you guys kind of like give y'all social media tags and all that handles so people can know how to follow you. And then let us know what's next for you guys. Like, what's coming up for you and your organizations. Let us know. I'll let the people know what's going on with you. Jay, you go first because this guy.
All right, bet. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me, man. It's been dope just kicking it with y'all, man, and building with y'all. Always love being in community with y'all. So with that, you can follow me on, I use Instagram the most. So you can follow me on Instagram at JAY Acosta, ACOSTA, the number 24. Follow me on IG, and I'm on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Jason Acosta. Hopefully that comes up. You see New York City or the Bronx, that's me. I'm in there. And then you can also follow NYC Men Teach at NYC Men Teach across all platforms. So yeah, that's that.
All right,
it was good having New York energy on here. It was good.
Yeah. And Jay, I need my spot on the podcast, man.
I got you, brother. We're gonna talk.
Yeah, for sure. Sterling, where can people find you at, man? What's next for you?
Oh yeah, excited about this Social Justice Academy. That is top of mind for me right now. We're building out the end of the school year portion, and we're doing a week-long summer experience. COVID notwithstanding, we're going to figure out the ways to make sure that that's safe. But we're really excited to put students in front of county leaders and say, like, let's make some real moves. So I'm super excited about that project and what it can mean for students in my home county. But if you want to get involved with us, stay connected, you can also like hit me and you can Google me enough to find me in the LinkedIns and all that good stuff on socials. So I'm Sterling G in the personal world, STERLYG. If you go to Twitter, you got to put STLRY_G because that guy won't give me my handle. But it's all good. It's all good. You can also follow my firm at The Grimes Firm on both Instagram and Twitter. We're going to be launching the website soon, so you can see a little bit more about what we actually do. But yeah, feel free to connect at any point. I'm super excited about this work and the ability to continue building with y'all. So thank you so much for welcoming me into the space. I just feel super honored to continue being able to do this stuff every day.
No, facts, man. So keep us updated with the coalition, man. You know, BMEA, we got your back, man. Jay, Sterling, man, appreciate you guys, man. Much love.
Good being with y'all. Thank you so much.
Be easy.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, you almost took it to the max, 7:57. We're gonna end on time for everybody. We respect people's time.
Yeah.
This was a good show. It was a good conversation. You know, I'd be curious to see how. You know, I think it was Sterling who mentioned the behind the scenes conversations, right? I think those are the types of conversations that need to be happening to figure out how to standardize some of the, speaking of standardized, doesn't standardize some of the operations and thoughts between all the different regions and cities so that, you know, we can stand a little bit stronger and united. But we're back. I think we're back. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I feel confident in saying that. Of course, you can follow us on all of our social media, BMEA of Michigan. Of course, subscribe, follow us, all of all of that stuff. Mike and Chris, any last words before we head out for the night?
Yeah. So we got, we'll be back 2 weeks. I think that's April 29th. With the special guest, Dr. Charles Curtis. He's actually going to be our speaker at our May 8th event for the Black Male Mental Health event that we normally do. So you be on the lookout for our Black Male Mental Health event. That'll be May 8th at 10:30. That's a Saturday. So you'll see the flyers and the Eventbrite, so you guys can register as soon as possible to join our event. For those of you who know us, we do an event every month on mental health for our teachers, for everyone. It's open to everyone. But we're doing, mental health because that's May's Mental Health Month. And so it's important that we address that, especially in the COVID, especially for our educators. So look out for that.
Yeah. Mike said it all. I will say this, and I was dog tired before the show. I took a power nap before the show, and now I'm leaving feeling better. So I think that to me, that's like my personal marker. Like, okay, I'm leaving feeling energized. Just feeling good heading into Friday into the weekend. So I appreciate you guys.
All right, one last time, shout out to Jason and Sterling for joining us. Shout out to you all for tuning in. This is Lifting Our Voices, a BMEA podcast. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.